What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Sobering Truth. I'm finally pretty excited to get this one off the ground. In here right now with my boss at the moment. I think I got all these cameras working correctly. That's me. There's the boss right there for those listening, not watching. That's my Saint Bernard Toby. Gonna be 12 in June. So here we go. He basically said you got to do this episode today. You don't really have an option. And then hopefully in the next week or so, I'm gonna have some guests in here so I can really release some episodes. But welcome to episode. I'm gonna call it 001. One. I don't know what I'll call it, but welcome to the Sobering Truth. So I basically wanted to get in here and kind of record some stuff about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, how I got to where I'm at, and what to expect moving forward. Now that I got the audio video, I'm waiting on a couple more things, but I think I got it as good as I can for what I'm working with. But basically, who the hell am I? There's going to be a lot of people listening to this, a lot of people watching this that know exactly who I am, that have met me before. And then I'm hoping, knock on wood here, that this whole thing reaches a whole bunch of people that have no idea who I am, where I came from, what I'm all about, why I'm doing this. So I'm gonna try to make a concerted effort for this whole thing to reach out and touch as many people as possible. So I guess I'll just start with the fact that I'm pretty much your average everyday run of the mill almost 36-year-old adopted from Brazil. And I really gotta find somebody to help me with this audio and video recording. But anyways, yeah, so basically adopted from Brazil. I grew up with two of the most amazing parents that anybody could ask for. Pretty much won the lottery when it comes to that aspect of my life. And grew up in this area, and for those that don't know, this area means the capital region, capital district. It's essentially Albany, New York, and the surrounding towns. And when I say surrounding towns, I mean I grew up in Guilderland. Well, I grew up in Niski unit till I was 3. Then we moved to Guilderland, New York, and then from Guilderland we moved to Latham when I was 13, and basically went to college locally, got stuck in that area, and now I'm a little bit more north to a place that some people might be familiar with called Saratoga Springs. But anyways, we'll get to all those in a little bit. So looking around this room, I kind of decorated the studio, pretty much with a lot of stuff I had growing up, some like nostalgic memorabilia, stuff of my grandfather's, just kind of things that remind me of the past, and I'm hoping that'll remind some of my guests of their past as well, because one of the big things that I really want to get across with this podcast is that all of us had a beginning before addiction or alcoholism or whatever it was that kind of took over our life. Everybody came from somewhere on this planet with a set of parents at some point in time. And I think that's the most crucial part that I want to get to eventually. But a little bit more about me. I was a pretty active kid. I loved being outdoors. And one of the biggest things that I got into at a fairly young age, which is, as most hockey parents know nowadays, that's the age you got to get into it. But around 4 or 5 years old, my best friend growing up, he was right across the street from me. Rob, shout out Rob. But his parents brought both of us down to a local AHL hockey game. We had the Albany River Rats in town, and from the second I started watching that game, I was hooked. And by that fall, my parents had me enrolled in learn to skate programs and then learn to play programs growing up. And for whatever reason, it's a fast paced game, and the amount of thinking that's involved. I was just drawn to it. I love it. I still love it today. Any chance I can get on the ice, it's the best hour of my life you can have as an adult right now. But hockey's always been a huge part of my life. And the Albany River Rats were the AHL team for the New Jersey Devils, so obviously you just kind of followed them, and hence the Devils jerseys that you'll see, Devils signs in this room. But that was one of my big things growing up, was was hockey, and then the other one basically anything outdoors. And my grandfather built a place up on a lake locally, and that was one of my favorite pastimes during the summers, just be up there with my, at that point, grandparents, parents, aunt, uncle, and it just, we still have a place up there today, and again, that's one of my favorite spots to be. So really, like, just a genuinely good kid. Decent grades. I wasn't, the valedictorian, but I wasn't bottom of the barrel. I mean, that was pretty much for the most part through my years. So went to public school up until sixth grade, at which point there was a local all boys Catholic military private high school, and they were known for their hockey program locally. So naturally, my parents took me over there to an open house, and they basically said, "The choice is yours, but um, if you wanna go there, go for it." And I know Tim Flanagan was the head hockey coach there, and but he was the guy to play for back then. Um, so I made that decision to get over there and play hockey all through high school. And again, nothing crazy. I didn't party much. I didn't really leave the house a ton. I spent most of my youth and childhood, whether it was at the hockey rink or on the lake. Those are kind of my two places. And just looking around the room, I got a couple pictures and whatnot, but just remembering like family vacations down to Topsail Island, North Carolina, Outer Banks, and fun stuff like that. I had a solid core group of kids. I was going through some pictures recently, some of the birthday parties I had, and kind of reminiscing on some of the guys and girls I grew up with. And it was a smaller group of fellas, but we'd always have, my parents were the ones that would, everybody up to the lake or whatever for the birthday parties. So I guess the picture I'm trying to paint is just that typical, genuine, all Brazilian American hockey player, which is quite the combination when I say it out loud. And and then moving forward, I mean, like I said, my grades were decent. They weren't terrible. Just they were just there. And once it got to time to start looking at colleges, I'd always been into Legos growing up and fixing things. And then my grandfather taught me a lot, and then my friend's father taught me a lot about building houses, construction, fix this, fix that. If it broke, there had to be a way to fix it, and that's, it was kind of ending that area where at that era where everything was fixable with bolts and screws, and you could take things apart, put them back together, and that was one of my favorite things to do. So it was kind of a no-brainer when it went to looking at colleges. I mean, I knew I wanted to get into some type of engineering, building, something like that, and so I applied to a bunch of different engineering schools locally, and a little distance from here, but nowhere too far. A couple hours, I think, was my biggest radius. And there's a school locally called RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and that was kind of like my reach school at that point. And I remember I put in my applications, and I got a few acceptance letters, and I got waitlisted at RPI. So I had written the admissions counselor. Uh, was fairly lengthy explanation as to why I was hoping that I could get into RPI. And I remember I drove over there. It was a nice day out. I drove over. I think his name was Ulysses. Weird the things you remember. But I drove it over there, hand delivered it to his office, and within 3 days, I got the acceptance letter from RPI, and I was all pumped um, to go there. And the one stipulation I had with my parents, even though that school is, I don't know, 15 minutes from the house I grew up in Latham, the one stipulation I had with my parents was that I wanted to stay on campus. And I don't know if that was the best decision or worst decision of my life, but it's important in my story because it gets me to where I'm at right now. It's interesting that growing up, as I mentioned, I was a pretty good kid, pretty much followed the rules. And then going to an all boys Catholic military school, it's very, very strict curriculum, and You got the brothers, everything kind of keeping you in line, and then you get out in the world of college, and it's just like, boom, you're an adult. Here's the world. Good luck, have fun. So I remember freshman year, I had never touched alcohol. I hadn't had a sip of alcohol until freshman year in college. I know it was in the fall. I don't remember if it was before or after Halloween. Um, but let me backtrack a hair. So, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really go out a ton growing up, and um, I made myself a promise that when I got to college, I was gonna attempt to be more outgoing and social, and just try to meet as many people as possible. So freshman year, when we first moved into the dorm, I just made it a point to go around and say hi to whoever was there. Um, and I don't know if any of y'all remember MySpace, but way back when, I got a funny little story here. Way back when MySpace was a thing, I jumped on. I think it was there was a group on MySpace called "What kind of ride are you bringing freshman year? What kind of ride you bringing to school?" or something like that. And I remember I had reached out to this one friend of mine. His name's Roddy. I reached out, and I think it was on the page. He said 2000 Mustang, 99 Mustang, something like that. 2001 Mustang, I forget. And I said, "Oh, no kidding. I'm bringing my 2000 Mustang." And that was the end of it. Didn't think anything of it. And RPI is not a huge school, but it's not a small school. I think there was like 1,200 freshmen freshman year class, and I'm moving in for moving day. They got all the fraternities helping you carry and all sorts of stuff and fridges and whatnot. And I remember putting something down, and I'm walking out of my dorm room door, and I hear from across the hall, "Justin," and I was like, "Roddy." And it was just wild that this one kid I talked to on some MySpace page ended up directly across the hall from me. And fast forward through the entire state RPI, he and I were very, very close friends. But back to where I was going, it was interesting because all through high school, I didn't touch alcohol, didn't think about alcohol. I was dating a girl, and she would go over to her friends and she would drink with them and whatnot. And I would tell her, "Oh my God, you shouldn't be doing that, how illegal it is, this, that, and the other." And I was trying to dissuade her from anything involving alcohol, staying away from parties and whatnot. And fast forward to freshman year in the fall. I don't know if there's any other alcoholics out there that can recite it like this, but there was a group of us, and we were just looking for something to do. And as a freshman, it's not easy to get into a party, find the party. You got to get invited, this, that, and the other. So we were just kind of walking. I remember what street it was on. I can't remember the house, but we were on 13th Street in Troy, New York. And we had tried this one party. It was way too wild. And we were just kind of walking around, and there's this one, looking back, it was kind of the creepiest thing ever, but there's this one dude asking if we were looking for a place to party. And it was in a basement. Um, One of those, they're kind of city houses. They're not like brownstones or anything, but they're, your city row houses. And we went down in the basement. There wasn't a ton of people out. I don't think it was too late. I think it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock, so early for college kids. And I remember a couple friends of mine, they had all been drinking through high school, so they grabbed some beer and they were like, "Justin, you're not going to want a beer for your first drink." But there was like one of those things with a little spigot on it, the big jugs, with some kind of jungle juice, party juice in it. And I remember filling a cup, and basically, because I've always been a chugger of drinks. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's coffee, water, as soon as it's at a temperature that is drinkable, I drink it very quickly. So I drank it pretty quick, and I went to refill, and one of my friends was like, "Dude, you should probably slow down on that. We're not quite sure what's in it yet." And I remember, I don't know, it must have been maybe a half hour later when it started to hit me. That initial buzz was like an exhilarating feeling. And I remember looking at my one friend, his name was Phil. I remember looking at him outside, and I was like, "Dude, this is freaking amazing. Why did we not do this every single day?" And it was at that point I knew I was going to have a problem with alcohol at some point in my life. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. So I just, I turned into that guy where it was, approaching 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and I was trying to figure out where we were going, what we were doing that night, and I would basically be the guy that, door to door in the dorm, or start texting people. Hey, you coming out? You doing this? You doing that? You doing that? All right, let's get a group together. And we get a group, and I would figure out how to get us in freshman year. I would figure out how to get us into a party, and then it was kind of nice because a bunch of my friends at that point decided that they were going to start pledging fraternities, and as they all started pledging fraternities, they were able to get the rest of us all into whatever particular party that. And I had the schedules down, memorized. I was talking to everybody, and I would go to that frat that Friday, that frat that Saturday. Um, and it was just your typical college party, which, I mean, looking back, um, it seemed like your typical college partying, but for me, like I couldn't stop thinking about it. Um, I wished I could have been at a college party every night of the week, and then it just progressed through college, where as senior year kind of came around the bend, and it was that time to start applying for jobs and looking at jobs and whatnot. And a lot of my friends were getting jobs. I basically I I was applying, um, but at the same time I wasn't trying that hard because I didn't want the party to stop. And I'm trying to think. I think it was either right before graduation or whatnot. My friend's dad was in the process of flipping some houses on his own. He would buy them up. He would do all the work. And he asked me. He said, "Well, if you don't have anything lined up yet, why don't you come join me, and we can we can um, we can start a little company, and if you want, I'll put up the money, and we can flip some of these houses, and I'll start teaching you the business side of things." And as I uh, I started to get into that with him, I enjoyed every moment of the fixing up of the houses, like the physical labor, but I wasn't so keen on the whole business end of it. Um, so we did a couple houses. We did okay. Nothing crazy. It wasn't like the freaking house flipping shows when we're making $150,000. But it's not like we did terribly. Ran into some hiccups, this, that, and the other thing. But during that process, I'd still been sending out my applications, and I got a job here locally. It was with a large construction company, engineering construction. Um, and they were building at that time a big chip fab plant, basically one that makes all the chips for our cell phones and computers and all that stuff locally. The project itself was super cool. There was a lot going on there. Huge budget. It was one of the biggest budgets I think in the U.S. at that point, if I remember correctly. And I got the job. Ended up doing it from 10 months to the day, January 2nd to October 2nd of that year, and it was cool. I wasn't huge on the corporate environment with the cubicle lifestyle and the office gossip and the water fountain talk. That wasn't my favorite part. But as I was walking around the job site, I remember thinking to myself all the time. I'd see the welders up there, and I'd see the framers up there, and the drywall and the tapers and the electricians, plumbers, and all those guys. And I'm like, oh man, I really miss doing all that stuff. And I wish I could get back into that somehow, but still make the same amount of money and this, that, and the other. And um, I ended up, while working for that company, applied for a mortgage, bought. I was still with my girlfriend from college. Bought us a house, a cute little suburb in Niskayuna that needed pretty much 100% of a facelift. It wasn't like a full gut job, but every room in the house needed something. And we figured we'd move in, fix it up for like 5 years or so. So that's what we did, until that October 2nd date I talked about. And it was at that point I said, you know what, I got a decent amount saved up. I'm just going to dump it into this house and see if I can't make a little bit of a living off of flipping houses. So quit the engineering job, And it's interesting. Um, I guess I'll get back to that once I finish the story. But moved into this house and basically spent all day, every day fixing it up, made it look great. I sold that for a fairly decent little profit. Bought a fixer upper right near RPI, that college I attended. Two family. This house, it was a short sale. This one needed literally everything. Gutted all the way down to the studs, rebuilt from zero, and I had a freaking blast doing it. And during this time frame, um, I decided I didn't really enjoy working alone too much. So it was at that point that my boss right here joined my life. I decided I needed somebody to keep an eye on me all day. So I thought a Saint Bernard would do the trick. Um, so I think let's see, we're in 20. I don't know what year it is anymore, but well, yeah, probably 2015. And I'm working on this house all day, sweating it out nonstop. But the one thing, it was around this time I noticed that working for myself, I could pretty much just buy, 12 pack and have a fridge on the job site and just start drinking them as I'm working. And I, that's what I did, and all of a sudden, 2 months later, 12 pack wasn't doing it because you gotta remember that I'm still in the mid 20s. And my girlfriend and I, we loved going out. We continued that college party lifestyle at night and on the weekends, whether it was, in downtown Troy, New York, or whether it was up on Sacandaga Lake, or it didn't really matter where it was. But we met drinking together, and our relationship basically was built around partying and drinking. And while a lot of our friends had been out there, working their engineering jobs and starting to build lives and settle down. We continued the party lifestyle. I know I didn't want to give that part of my life up yet. I was just getting started, and I think that perfectionism in me was, if I can't be the best engineer, I'll just be the best at drinking. And that I was able to do. I was able to stay out till 2 a.m. and just wake up 6:30 the next morning, head to work, do it again, and it was at this point where I'd start drinking earlier in the day, earlier afternoons, and then I'd just get ready for whatever we were gonna do that night. And if there wasn't something going on, I would make something happen. Uh, I mean, there's usually some bar that has trivia, or um, I was rocking on the river where every Wednesday night they'd have a band playing, and there was beer flowing there. And if none of those were going on, I would just start texting people and have a little bonfire at the house. And this went on, for years and years and years. And here's my thing with this episode: like I could talk for, I don't know, 3.5 hours about all this stuff, but. I think what's going to be fun about the podcast is that, like, a lot of my little intimate one-off stories will come out as I have other people sitting over there, uh, where we can at this point look back and laugh and and tell those stories about how insane it was that we built our lives around this one little substance. And so for me, moving forward, um, it was just construction by day, drinking by night, and then they started to intermingle with each other, and it was just a life of that cycle. Um, and the interesting thing is, I hear a lot of these new things now that I'll get into soon. But one of the things, and I'll say it again later in the podcast, is at first it was fun in reference to drinking or drugs or whatever particular person's substance was. At first it was fun, and it was fun with consequences, and then it was just consequences, and that has stuck with me ever since I first heard it a few months back. But if I uh, if I fast forward a little bit, without telling a million stories, because I want to save a bunch of them for once I get some guests in here, some relatable stories that I'm sure will come out. Um, but I kind of want to fast forward into where I'm at right now, where um, in 2018, life was kind of starting to spiral out of control. Uh, Things in that relationship were deteriorating primarily because of my drinking and the fact that I wanted to keep drinking and she wanted to kind of settle down and start this nice fun life. And um, at that point alcohol had already grabbed me enough to the point where I was putting that before pretty much anything else in my life. It's kind of one of those wild things where looking back, it's also clear all the signs and everything that everybody else could see, of me slipping and sliding, and me just, it's kind of like if you could imagine sliding down an icy hill, and I was just trying to find anything to grab onto, um, to maintain that life. So, uh, unfortunately, as that relationship ended, I just continued to not make great decisions. And so, anyways, at some point, her and I were still trying to work on things, and uh, I went out to Recovery Sports Grill. It's like a sports bar. They got like a million TVs in there, and so you couldn't get the Devils game on at home locally. It was blacked out, and yeah, you didn't have to go to the bar, but there wasn't really much streaming or anything like that at that point. Um, so either you missed the game that night, or you had to go to a bar to watch it. And most bars didn't get the didn't have the full sports packages. So Recovery Sports Grill, I knew always had my Devils game. I went out there. On the way home, it was, I don't know, a mile and change away from where we were living at the point, and I took a left hand turn, and there go the lights. So this was kind of the first wake up call, that really kind of hit me pretty hard. Getting that phone call the next day from my dad asking, not in the nicest tone of voice, what happened, and basically giving me the name to an attorney and starting to go down that road. And at that point, um, the DWI happened in springtime, and it was somewhere as we were working through the whole court procedure, and I didn't realize how long of a process that was. And at some point that summer, my attorney shot me a quick text and said, "Hey, did you go get that evaluation? Your alcohol use evaluation um, from a facility?" And I said, "No, I haven't." So I hopped in the car. He said, "Well, we're gonna have to get that done before court tomorrow night." So I hopped in the car, and this is where everything kind of started to lead me towards the path we're on today. But hopped in the car, summer 2018, went over to a local inpatient facility, and they did a they did an alcohol evaluation and this, that, and the other, and basically said that I would need to go to an inpatient treatment for a minimum. I think it was 14 days at that point. And I'll never forget that once the judge did whatever he had to do and basically said you got to go to the inpatient, or the other option was X 30 days in jail or something like that. Um, I said, yeah, absolutely, I'll go to the inpatient. We'll see what happens there. And um, I remember packed the backpack. That's all I brought with me was one backpack, and maybe some clothes in a rolly suitcase, a small rolly suitcase. I can't quite remember, but it was local. It's not like I went away anywhere, but it was still an inpatient. And I remember sitting there in the lobby waiting to go in, and there was a group of other patients that had been coming in from like a doctor's visit or something, and there was this one guy. His name was Hugo, and he said something to the secretary and pointed over at me, and away they went. And I don't know. I did the intake thing. It takes a while. About half hour after that, they give me a room. I'm unpacking some of my stuff into my room, and of course, this guy named Hugo comes in, and I still can't express to him how grateful I am to have him right there by my side, because I didn't realize that some of these places are pretty intense, and it was basically a step above jail. You got your bunkie, and you're in a hallway with a bunch of other guys, and that's pretty much it for 14 days, 28 days, however long you need to be in there. And you get groups throughout the day, probably 4 or 5 1 hour groups throughout the day. Your day's pretty much filled up, but at this particular inpatient, I mean, like I said, a step above jail. I mean, they pretty much just, y'all walk together down to the cafeteria, you eat in your allotted time slot, and then they walk you all back up in basically line. And it was an eye-opening experience, but it was not enough to change my thought process, and the fact that I would have to realize at some point that I can't consume alcohol anymore. That's one of the more daunting conversations to have with yourself, is that ever again conversation, which I'll get to eventually. But moving forward, uh, it just kind of continued same patterns. I mean, I didn't really maintain sobriety at that point, from what I remember, and the fact that I can't remember says a lot. Um, that time in my life is a little bit foggy. That 28 years old to 30 years old. Um, there's just a lot of changes and things going on. And then fast forward to moving to this particular house that I'm in now, back in 2019, in the fall of 2019. It's a fixer-upper farmhouse. Um, I mean, things were good. I had moved out of the place with my girlfriend from college, and myself and another girlfriend bought this. Um, and things were okay. I mean, I was still battling greatly with trying to balance the right amount of alcohol and to maintain a healthy relationship with everybody. It wasn't just romantic relationship, but being able to consume the right amount of alcohol around the right people at the right time. And that's where um, the balancing act comes in. And I think that's where a lot of the lies and everything just kind of all compile, and life just gets so confusing, and the only thing that I really wanted was to be able to drink without anybody bothering me. So this is where, like, that isolated drinking alone, drinking, you know. And at this point I'm still drinking most days now while I'm working. And again, a lot of the little detailed stories I'll get into when I have some other people in here, and I actually have somebody to respond to me, because Toby's not doing a lot of responding right now, as he's sleeping over there. But um, I think the hardest part for me at this point was knowing I needed the help, and I maintained. I was able to clean my act up a little bit. I got some time, and I you're gonna hear this probably with most of my guests that I have on here, where I was able to get a little bit of time on my own, and then I would take I'd go to a wedding, have a drink, and that one drink Um, Turned into a blackout night, turned into a not want to be hungover the next morning, which turned into the next day, and then the next day, and that snowball effect. And one word that you're going to hear a lot is progression. The progression of the disease of alcoholism and the disease of addiction. It it's absolutely wild because I'm a very logical person, and nothing about this disease is logical. The fact that if I did this right now, a little cream soda, if I took a sip of alcohol and that little tiny bit right there made its way to my brain, that would be it for me right now. I'd be gone. This podcast wouldn't be happening. There's a decent chance I'd probably wind up in jail within, I don't know, a week or two. Um, because that one sip that I can't take ever again in my life is going to lead my brain to want the exact same amount that I had last time I drank, which was way too much, way more than any we call. I mean, we use the word normal. I know everybody says that there's no such thing as a normal person, but um, us alcoholics like to call y'all normies. And some of the stories that you're going to hear in here about like that progression and the slips that aren't really slips and the people that are able to catch themselves and how lucky they are for not slipping all the way back into the disease. Um, I can't wait to get some people in here so y'all can hear some of these wild and crazy stories. Um, so, anyways, fast forward to a little bit ago, where everything got out of control and where all this whole concept started. Um, 2023, um, things were getting a little out of hand, and my girlfriend Stephanie basically said, she knows I got a problem. I know I got a problem. I got to do something about the problem. So um, I got a pretty funny story, but I'm gonna save it for a future cast because I have the perfect guest I'm thinking of right now that'll be able to help me out with that one. But basically, I went down to a rehab facility in Pennsylvania. It's no longer open. It was called Retreat, and the facility itself was pretty nice. Which another topic we'll get into at some point in this podcast is these facilities and what they're actually like inside, and it's a different world that not a lot of people know about unless you've physically been to one. Primarily because the the interesting part about going to a rehab facility is it's kind of like they take you and they throw you back to the 90s, um, right before the internet and right before technology was invented. Um, you get to these places and they take your clothes, they take everything, they search all of it. Every single item that you bring, you're allowed to have certain things, you're not allowed to have a lot of things. And one of them is technology. Your cell phone's gone. The second you hand that over to them, at most facilities, you don't get to see your cell phone. Some of them allow you to make phone calls out periodically. I'll get to that in a second. But for the most part, you're not connected to the outside world, and for good reason, but there's really not much technology in the facilities themselves. Some of them, the nicer ones, have TVs in all the rooms, but again, you get your cable channels. It's not like it's a smart TV where you can, hop on any of your streaming services. You get your 72 channels or whatever it is and pick your show, watch your show, and that's that. And like I said, it's kind of like going right back to the freaking 90s. So, anyways, I get to this place called Retreat. I have no idea what to expect. I know I'm going to be there for 28 days, and they kind of just let you loose the first day. You don't have to attend any groups. You can kind of just wander around, get your bearings. They show you where all the groups will be held, which is usually in a different building than the dorms. Um, And the way it's set up, I would say all the ones I know of, guys have their own dorm building, dorm hall, dorm wings, whatever you want to call it, and girls have their own. Um, so you kind of just do your own thing. They got some outdoor activities. If you're lucky, you're there during nice weather, so you can be outside. If you're not, and it's chilly, and you're living like you're like I said, you're in the 90s, 80s, 90s. Because the reason I say 80s, 90s, and not prior to that, is because you still have like DVD players in the common areas. So it's like right at that crest before the internet took over the world. Um, but one of the cool things is, and I really want to, I don't know if I can figure out how to mark the time on this, but one of the coolest parts about this feeling of being back in that time frame in history is that one of the best activities I found was to kind of just sit and talk to people. And that's where this whole idea for the podcast stemmed from, because I enjoy other people, but I more so enjoy figuring out who they are, how they got where they are, why. Because one thing I didn't mention earlier is that when I was at RP, I get an engineering degree. I also got a minor in psychology. And I mean, as I wasn't the best test taker in psychology, but I found all of it interesting. And that's kind of where I'm grateful for the alcohol in my past, from 18 to a couple of years ago, year and change ago, um, is that it was able to get me out of my shell and get me comfortable talking to people. I was that person at the airport that would just sit at the bar. If there was a freaking delay or whatever, I'd sit at the bar and I'd just chat with random people who would come up. I'd hear their stories. And I got pretty good at figuring out who to ask what to and how to pull information out of people. So, fast forward to sitting on these benches at rehab for, hours at a time. I'd sit down with the same person and just figure out how we all got where we are. And there were some commonalities and some complete differences. And that was kind of the coolest part for me, and it still is. It's 100% the coolest part. That's why I still love going to groups right now. I go to AA meetings. I'm not going to be a meeting pusher on this podcast. I mean, it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people, and I can't wait to get into all of these little nuances of this whole process of recovery, because the coolest part for me is it's different for every single individual. And what might work for me might not work for Toby, and it might not work for Bob or Fred or Tan or Lisa or Sarah or whoever I have on here. Um, but there's also things that I'll hear and I'll be like, oh, wow, that's a great idea. I need to try that. So I'm just open to hearing pretty much everything from anybody, and I don't plan on having this like an interview. I kind of want it to be more conversational. But anyways, back to sitting at rehab, and I'm hearing these stories and thinking to myself, if the rest of the world could hear who these people are, because the one commonality I got from every story is that they are all great people. And on meeting these people, when they have 0 days sober when they walk through that door, up to 28. Some people are there longer. Um, but I'm meeting these people in their sobriety. Some people it's their first time getting sober. Some of these people it's their 20th time at a rehab facility, and it's just intriguing to me as to what is working, how the relapse happened, if it happened, um, the causes of everything. So I can't wait to be able to have other people kind of give that rundown of their childhood up until the point that they started consuming whatever it was. And some people are going to be just like me. I didn't drink till college. I didn't do that. I was fine. I was a great kid. And others are going to be like, I started drinking at the age of 8. My dad had a Budweiser sitting on the counter, and I started drinking it. And then there's other people whose parents were on drugs when they were born. Their mother was on drugs when they were born, so they were literally born with heroin inside of their bloodstream and haven't had a fighting chance since. That are battling this disease, and I just can't wait to get some of these stories out there. Um, so this first rehab experience for me at retreat was 2023. And after hearing all these stories, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go home. I got 20 days sober already. Should be good to go. And I don't think it was more than a month of being home. Same thing right back. But at this point, now you gotta hide it, and that's where things get even worse. Because prior to rehab, for the first time, it's like everybody knows you're drinking. You've tried to cut back. You've tried to do this. You've tried to do that. But once you're back from rehab, it's kind of that guilt and that shame feeling where you don't want anybody to know at this point, especially nobody close to you. So you either gotta hide it when you're around them. You're hiding things in your room and running back to grab a sip of this, sip of that, chug this, chug that, and again, I really a lot of these little nuances I want to get into when I have somebody else in here that can relate to it and kind of help me along with some of these stories. But so anyways, this goes on for not too much longer. Things go south that winter, and then spring of 2024. Again, I got some other people that'll help me through these particular through at least the details of these stories. But um, 2024, things are getting pretty bad. I went back to retreat for what was supposed to be 10 days of quote detox, whatever. I didn't want to go for the full 28, um, because I mean obviously I know what I'm doing. I can control everything. I'll be fine. So I convinced my counselors to let me go home after 6 days of this little miniature detox. That did absolutely nothing. And it was the Monday after I got home. I had been let go from the jobs that I'd been working on. I loaded up my truck, construction trailer. I got a Ram 3500 with, a box trailer behind me, and I was coming around Saratoga Lake. And long story short, I ended up putting the whole rig into a ditch, and it was back to rehab again at that point. So, um, retreat wasn't an option at this point, and this one guy, I'm hoping, knock on wood, that he can be possibly my first guest in here. His name is Dan. Dan, the man of the pickle van. Hoping he'll be able to tell you all about that when he's here. But he had been in my life for a number of years prior to this incident happening, and um, basically more on the family advocacy side, letting them know that um, there's help out there for them as well, and basically telling or trying to comfort them in the fact that there's not a lot that they can tell me to do, that they can force me to do, and the decision to not drink is going to have to come from me somehow, some way, and it's gonna take my own bottom. It can't be their bottom. It can't be a friend's bottom. It can't be a counselor's bottom. It's gotta be my own bottom, to pull me out of it. But anyways, Dan the man with the pickle van found me a spot down in Pennsylvania, um, other side of Pennsylvania, out on the western side, and I went down there. Another decent facility. Um, Also co-ed, guys, girls, and luckily it was April 15th. I remember it was tax day, and I hadn't gotten my taxes done, so I said, this is freaking perfect. I'll just tell them I was in rehab. So down to Pennsylvania I go, and again it was a cool experience. But I ran into the same thing where their groups were great, their counselors were good. Excuse me, but I found that in the free time they had a bunch of outdoor activities and whatnot going on, being that the weather was starting to get nice. But the coolest part was they had this little fire pit, a bunch of benches and chairs around the fire pit, and then other benches uh, scattered throughout the whole campus that they had there. And my favorite activity yet again was uh, hold on, all right, everybody. All right, all right. And I'm back live for a little while here. I had to take a little break. Got a lot going on, and that's one of the most important parts of this particular recording right here. Um, I know that last session I was in the studio. Um, I had mentioned that the boss over there was kind of forcing me to do this episode, and I said I'd allude to why. Moving on. Um, so today has been a day that I've been dreading since the day that I got Toby. Um, his health has kind of been declining over the last, I don't know, 8 months, and I finally made the decision to make that phone call this week, and the things that they tell you um, at some of these facilities and in the AA groups and meetings and just people in recovery is that life doesn't stop. I was in a group with a guy, and one of his favorite phrases when it came to his check-in is "life's just life, and I'm just living in it," and how true that is. Um, I think the biggest difference is now I can emotionally handle it. Um, I can regulate all my thoughts and feelings, and it's not always the easiest. And I know today's going to be one of the hardest days I've had to face in a very very long time. But I've created that support network, and I've talked about how I'm feeling, which is not something that I used to do, and um, I think I'm at peace with the decision. I know the time has come. It was coming. Um, it's gonna be a good little day for both of us. We got a ride coming soon. Um, Basically, we're gonna take a little trip up to camp. Weather's supposed to be around 70, sunny with a little breeze. So I figured if I could make this day perfect for him, um, that's what we were gonna do. So that's the plan. We're gonna go to camp, and I know. I guess the biggest thing is that not every moment in recovery is rainbows and sunshine. Um, but the best part is I can do this without drinking. I can do it without wanting a drink. Has the thought crossed my mind? Yeah, of course. Um, but I'm at a point now where a year ago I don't quite know where I would have been. I don't know what I would have done. I hadn't built the support network I got at the moment, and I'm kind of at a lack of words for how to describe what I'm feeling at the moment. I just know that I feel solid. Um, and we're gonna see how today goes, but hats off to Toby. It's been a wild ride. He's been through a lot. I'm sure I'll touch on him as these episodes start to collect. But he's been a huge player, a huge factor. One of the things I hadn't gotten to yesterday or last night when I was recording is that while I was down in Pennsylvania at this one place, shout out shout out to Mount Laurel. Um, when I was down there, they allowed me to bring him with me and have him during my stay at rehab, and it was definitely a blessing. He kept me sane. He basically motivated me to make it through whatever they threw at me. Um, but prior to that, I mean, he's been there for a heck of a lot. We've lived in a lot of places. We've done a lot of houses together. He's been on a lot of job sites with me, and uh, I'm just uh, I'm just happy to be able to have had him for as long as I've had him. Our lifespan is 8 to 10 years, and let's see, gonna be 12 in June. It would have been so. Um, it's like I said, it's gonna be a tough day, but at this point, I mean, talk about the timing of everything when I'm in these groups, when I'm at A meetings, and how everything kind of does happen, as it's supposed to, and I have to be at peace with that because the second I start trying to control the outcome of anything that life is throwing at me, that's when all sorts of stuff will go haywire. So as long as I keep that at the forefront and know that I'm making, the best decision I can given the circumstances, whether it's this or whether it's the next thing that life throws at me, I just have to realize that everything will be okay. Everything will work itself out, and it's just going to be a wild ride. But as long as I don't pick up a drink, things will continue to get better. So I'm gonna go get ready for the rest of the afternoon. Um, I'll be back on here to finish up this episode. I just needed to get that out, and I really only had one shot to do this recording. So stay tuned. I'll be right back after this.